It's the Brandon Cruz Daily Fantasy Podcast, where I go and look at loan plays and strategies specifically designed for GPPs. This is a show for people who are already informed on daily fantasy sports and how these contests operate. If you have any question related to NASCAR, it isn't a stupid question, feel free to shoot them away on Twitter, BrandonCruzDFS. Most importantly, take everything with a grain of salt and use your best judgment when making entries. Additionally, if you have a game addiction, that's just not my problem. Check your sense of feelings at the door. We're talking about Richmond here. Now, I just got back in town, okay? I've been traveling. We understand that. Thankfully, Pearce has been absolutely killing it with videos, and I understand this is a bit weird to start if you're a casual viewer. I understand. Now I'm gonna say, please check out his videos. This is not me like saying, oh my god, please check out my friend. No, Pearce is the guy that I work with. We are splitting this half and half. All the Patreon money goes to our stuff that we do. I'm going to assume you watching this have already watched this video, and this video for the Cup Series here at Richmond. So because of that, I might skip over some things, or I might not touch on every little thing out there, because Pearce has done a wonderful job this weekend at addressing a ton of stuff, okay? And so just like, you know, being in school or university, if you went to college, oh my God, you're so quirky, you went to college, and you missed something, you know, I'm not going to go back and talk it over, so just check Pearce's stuff out, okay? I'm looking at this race and this video in more so of a sense of how I want to approach this week and what I'm doing to prepare myself for this weekend here. And so we might not just dive into Richmond data right off the bat, but this is what I wanted to do, and this is stuff that I'm going to be doing anyway. Like I said, I just got back in town Wednesday, been on the road since Monday, you know, very, very long way to go. This is, if you're part of the Patreon, you have access to the NASCAR shared folder. This is the Richmond Cup Series video for this week. And normally, you know, whenever Pearce doesn't make video, I don't normally put a lot on screen just because I'm trying to just not give stuff away, but I'm only showing what has already been seen from Pearce's videos. Now, really quick, what I want to do real fast is to look at this previous race from March, April, whenever we ran it. That was in... So this was April 4th, my bad, April 3rd. This was the 7th race of the year, first short track we went to. Okay, I understand we were at Phoenix a while back, but this was the first one where it was going to go green. You could actually not pass, but the race would go green. You could have strategy play into it, okay? And so what I'm going to do right now, at least for me, because this is what I'd be doing anyway, and since yet again Pearce has done such a great job at covering a lot of Richmond stuff already, I don't feel like I necessarily have to retread over it. It's kind of a waste of time for me to make an identical video compared to what he's done. So what I'm doing is I'm going to look at my projections in this race from April to see how close I was, see how far away I was on some people. And the reason I'm doing this is to get an idea of what the race should look like. And let me bring that up really quick. Find that. Which is this one here. And the reason I'm doing this is in here. I'll show you real quick, just because, not that I doubt people would think I'm changing it and stuff, but so here's my cup sheet. You might remember this from the live show. I don't remember how many lineups I did. I'm assuming that this was probably a week where I either did a single entry, 3 max, and typically if I don't remember the lineups, I typically broke even or didn't lose a ton of money, or I didn't win a ton of money. It's very much, if I don't remember it, that's just how it is. Like I remember Dover, darling, you've heard me talk about it. Michigan last weekend, I have no idea why. Only had $130 on the race. I was more tilted on that race than I have been this entire year. Not really sure why. But Cup Series at Richmond, don't remember. I didn't color coordinate lineups, so I'm assuming I didn't make a ton of lineups, because typically, like for example, and I'm just choosing Martinsville because for whatever reason I have Martinsville as the first video or the first sheet that I have that I didn't have series at the end of Cup. If I can move, what are we doing here? That I didn't have series at the end of Cup for whatever reason. So it's the first one there. But typically, whenever I build lineups, I color coordinate, which I think you should do. If you're building enough lineups, you should do it. And I'm not showing this because one of these Byron lineups is the optimal. I'm just showing it to, typically whenever I build a lot of lines, I typically have my ownership, have my line. I did not have that for Richmond this last time. You can see that I have not added since. So I'm going to pull this over because I just don't like showing the behind the scenes stuff of projections, I'm going to black out some of this stuff here. Give me a moment. And the reason I'm doing this, because I would typically do this anyway. Okay, cool. So I've blacked everything out except the... So this is... All right, hold on. So these are lap lead points, these are fast lap points, and the reason I'm doing this is to get an idea of how to approach lineup construction, or at least approach more so projection construction this week, because this was still earlier enough in the year to where I was leaning towards, and we have seen that it ended up going this way, that you just need to look at this year's data. Looking at previous races, it can be important for certain drivers, but it's certainly like a tertiary and certainly way down far the line when you're looking at certain guys on how they did on their previous races at a certain track. Like if you find a track where somebody just consistently performs better than other tracks, where it's an outlier for them, it's their best track, they have a knack for it, that's why. Anyway, we were early in the year, we weren't really sure what we were doing. I'm going to move this off so we can actually look at the proper projections here, or how people scored. And at least with me doing this, I'm looking at this and also looking at the practice data from. See, this is going to be, because I'm going to be moving around a lot. On top of the practice data, and as if you've seen Pearce's videos, which you should, otherwise you're just kind of here floating around. You're in a creek without a paddle here. I'm assuming you already have this information. I'm looking at this based on the projections, based on how my projections did of how close they were to certain plays and how close they weren't. Going back to looking at practice data and stuff like that. It's probably gonna be a long video, very, very around the world, but it's more so me doing my own stuff here. And so right off the bat, William Byron, which is the following week, I took this, played him in, was underweight on Byron, but ended up having the optimal line with Byron. But I had Byron for 40.9 points with 5.5 fast laps and 5.4 laps led points. You can clearly see that he blew it out of the water. And the reason I'm doing this is because, one, I think this race performs very similar to where we have fast laps spread out. Throughout the entire field. Laps led are clearly going to go to whoever short pits first, which is, before we get to it, Martin Truex Jr. nearly always short pit, which is what I like about Joe Gibbs in general. Usually that's the first team to short pit. Hendrick is usually behind and usually follows them, but typically it's either Kyle Busch, Truex, or Hamlin short pitting first, and we always enjoy seeing that. And this is exactly what happened last time, but typically the laps led, you can usually pinpoint them to certain plays. And what I do, what I started doing this year, is looking at the pit selection based on laps led. I don't do it on fast laps, but I do it on laps led. So this is the pit selection versus optimal line versus laps led positions here at Richmond. And so when we look at purple is optimal, so Truex was optimal. We have Bell optimal, Buscher, Dillon, Alex Bowman, and William Byron, and that is represented in this one here, this optimal line. And so when we look at not fast laps, when we look at laps led, where are they coming from? What are the pit boxes that they're coming from? It's not necessarily what pit box it is, but it's a situation of, do they have clearance either in front of them or behind them? Clearly you're going to have good plays typically be on the open pit boxes, because that's just how it normally goes. But specifically when we're trying to chase lap leaders, it shows that typically we can normally lean on the certainly good plays up front, being able to get those laps led either through gaining positions on pit road. And this is really more for pit road stuff, because versus like when you're under green and people are short pitting and stuff, it's just whoever stays out longer ends up leading the laps. Whoever short pits first gets all the fast laps. But here, at least this is the distribution of laps led. And so you can see Blaney leads laps, Byron leads laps, Kyle Busch leads laps, Hamlin, Bell, Logano, and Truex leads laps. And you can see that while clearly not every optimal play is leading laps, you're seeing that a lot of the optimal plays are coming from those guys here. And Blaney would have most likely been optimal if the race performs differently because Blaney ended up scoring quite a lot of points. And so yet again, this is just me kind of reviewing stuff, and then probably in 20 minutes I'll be going over like looking forward to this race. But this is stuff I was going to do anyway, so I figured I'd just record it just because I typically always do it. And so Byron, I had him projected for 40.9 points, missed it. And the reason I'm doing this is to, when I'm building projections this week, I need to realize that I'm going to need to spread fast laps out probably throughout the entire field, probably at least till, realistically, probably to 15 guys should have fast laps projected for, whereas laps led should most likely be condensed to around 5 or 4 drivers, okay, and I'll probably just end up projecting guys for around 15 points above, because typically whenever I build lines, and you can see, not just this week, but from here, typically, if you're not at 5x or you're not close to it, I don't even bother playing you, okay? And so typically for me, it doesn't matter if who's the guy like Christopher Bell, for example, 51.9 points, 5.9. It doesn't necessarily. I don't need to be right on the dot there. I just see him being able to lead laps, be able to get there. And what did Bell end up doing here? So Bell ends up getting 65. Had him for 51, but for me it's more of a binary play on each person to where how like when I have somebody projected for 5x, I can see it being any way, or like he can work, he might not work. However, when I project somebody for like 5 points, and this is not me going around like stroking myself, this is just me what I do every week, and I'm recording it for you and explaining my thought process in it. So if you're like at 5.9, if you're at 6x, I just assume that you're going to probably score around that or more in the race. When we get to Martin Truex Jr., had him for 78.4, he scores 77. When we get to Ryan Blaney, had him for 78.5, he scores 73.35. When we got Christopher Bell, as I said, 51.1, 65. And so for what I'm doing here is not looking at the projection point relative to what they did realistically. While that is important, I can give up a few points in one direction. I'm looking at, did I at least project proper guys to score above, say, 50 points? And that's what I'm doing here. And so, like when we got to Hamlin, missed on Hamlin. However, a lot of his laps came late in the race because his fast laps came when he pitted, because he was on a different schedule than everybody else. And so he was running faster laps and people were running their tires longer. And he got those laps led late in the race when he took the lead from Martin Truex Jr. and the guys with around 6 laps to go. And so even without him getting all those, he most likely would have scored, what is that, probably around 59 points. Either way, should have been more bullish on him this last time. When we get to Bowman, I had Alex Bowman projected for 64.35. He did 63.65. I know I was bullish on Larson. I had Larson projected for 64.5. Larson scores 59.5. And usually I do this week in and week out, entering the week. That's just, like I said, I don't record this stuff. When I look at Tyler Reddick, I think I overreacted to him this last time based on him having pit road be such a huge thing at Phoenix. I was like, okay, maybe Reddick can get up there. Maybe he can run better. I had him for 62. I don't think Reddick got anywhere near that. And the reason I'm mainly doing it for these guys is to at least show my opinion, because we got to remember that I started this YouTube channel. I started recording the videos for me to come back and look at, to help my own personal process out, understand what I'm doing right or wrong, and so on and so forth. And so what my main takeaway is, I need to, entering this weekend, have fast laps distributed between way more people and have them way more evenly, probably between anywhere from 2 to 5 points across the field here. Let's do Kyle Busch last, because I think I was very bullish on Kyle Busch. And for 65, he does 40. Oh, but he has to pit late. Not pit late, but NASCAR kneecaps him because they put tape on the car and they don't let him know. Really quickly, going back to the pit selections, this is one thing that I wanted to do that Pearce did not go over, and I doubt he would have remembered. If I can open this up. I'm going to open up the pit data on my other screen. But Christopher Bell's pit, 2 things in this race that, yet again, the NASCAR propaganda pushes out. This is, if you remember, everybody lost their shit over Kyle Busch having the fastest pit stop in NASCAR history. You know, and it's, come on now. What are we doing here? What do you mean? What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Are we doing pictures? What are we doing? What are we doing? Let me open this back up again. Anyway, as I'm talking, Kyle Busch runs the fastest pit stop in NASCAR history, and then he immediately kills the car, leaving the pit lane or leaving the box. So the crew gets their pit stop done, and then Kyle Busch lets the clutch out and he stalls the car, leaving pit road. But they don't show that at all. Secondly, Christopher Bell has a light pole directly in the pit box, and so I want to see if I can find a picture of this because I want to check out their pits. I want to check out his pit times relative to other people's to see if that was a really big case. I'm pretty sure that's the only pit stall that has that, but let me check that real quick. And I understand people don't like me going over this stuff or like wasting their time with, oh my gosh, what is this pit data stuff? What is this? Why are we wasting time here? But I mean, these are things that I think really do play in that we don't go into and that we don't look at probably enough. And I have this going in slow motion. I need to mute this actually. Actually, it'll be right here at some point. Let me mute this. Where is my thing at? My camera blocks my mute. And so the reason I'm going in slow motion is because I was trying to find when they were talking about it and stuff, but I just figured I'd just use the commercial-free stream to find it, and usually they usually do wide enough shots on the pits. Okay, so here's Bell's stall, and you can clearly see that this pole is directly in the middle of Christopher Bell's stall. And so I wanted to go in and see if that impacted his pit times whatsoever, because that was a big story in the race that, okay, not only is Joe Gibbs trying their new rotating, where the guys run out, the guy doing the front tire and the rear tire on the right side then rotate over, and the guy who's doing the front tire now does the rear, and the guy who's doing the rear tire now does the front. That was a big story. The other big story was that Bell's crew was not able to perform that in this race because they have the pit stall with a light pole directly in the middle, so they could not do that choreography because that pole is in the middle of their like when they're working on everything, which is very odd that they have the Monster Energy box on this one and not that one. Whatever the case is, we need to remember that Pit Stall 21 this week has that in there. And so if I do see a correlation in the pit data, which we'll find together, we'll look at together. If I find anything significant, we might need to understand that, hey, and I understand you might be like, this is kind of pointless because he was optimal anyway, he led laps anyway, but how slow was he compared to the other Joe Gibbs guys? How slow was he compared to the rest of the field there? And so let's go ahead and do that real quick. I don't know what things I'll have to go through, so I'm going to pause again, or I'll just go to my face so we can start ranting about other things while we're doing this. And so the reason I'm doing a different video compared to Pearce because I just don't want to waste your time and my time saying the same things that Pearce said in a very good fashion. He's not wasting time. Secondly, a lot of people know that I don't look at other content just because I think Pearce has the content. That is me selling our stuff. That's me selling Pearce as well. But at the same time frame, it's not, because I fully believe that is like worth watching. I understand that people are like, man, that's like 4 hours of content or whatever this week. Yeah, and it's good content. It's him actually going over all the data that you would want to go over. Like, and this is not shade towards anybody. I know it's going to sound like it, but I would much rather listen to Pearce's content, whether I'm driving, walking, watching as I'm doing my own stuff, rather than a Twitter space, rather than some other content on YouTube, rather than reading other DFS articles. That's just a big waste of time where Pearce is going to do a lot of stuff in more detail than what other people are going to go through. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at Christopher Bell's times real quick compared to the rest of the field. So let me go here. Where are we at? Bell, it's going to be a while. I am going to pause this. Actually, I lied. I figured I'd do this live because some people ask me how I use this data and how I look through. So if I'm looking, usually I look for a specific driver. It's not that I just go through this stuff. Sometimes I'll go in and I look at the inbox time, which is way over this is total time in and out, duration on pit lane, which is always good to see. You can see that he was ranked. His average was 6th, and has everybody's here. You also have the positions gained and lost, which I don't like doing because NASCAR scores them differently. I don't think. I mean, it's something you can look at, but you need to correct too many. Like, this is, if you're looking at this, you then have to go through and look at all this stuff in relative to other people and see where they came from. When we're looking at Christopher here as well, where he is in terms of 4-tire average time in box compared to his other guys, and this is the fastest. This is what is it? This is the 4-tire stops. Driver in position. This is, hold on. Sorry, I know what I did. I was trying to not confuse myself with some. It's because I started right from left. Usually I go from right. So this is based. These are based on NASCAR's not place points, but positional scoring, and their metric, which I don't necessarily like because it doesn't show you enough. It just goes basically you don't have a net loss on most of your stops up there, and then it goes all the way to relative position. Like, these guys clearly, like Mcdowell, had an issue, had to come down pit road, lost a lot of spots on pit road because he stayed down there and he went a lap down and stuff. Other people had issues. This is one I don't look at. You can also go through here and look at actual official times here, which we can see that Bell is maintaining really quick stops. It's 4-tire pit stop here, and you can see that his average. He's averaging 11.8 seconds, which is, while it is 7/10 slower than Hamlin, it's slower than Truex. I believe he was identical with Kyle Busch, so we did not see a difference there. And even when we look at his actual pit stop times, even this shows clearly, like, this is a green flag pit stop, 258, 256, which would be this lap here. Where are we at? Where's laps at? And I'm basically doing this to explain what I'm looking at and why I'm looking at it and everything here. Where are we at? Where are the laps? Where are we? What are we doing? Is this one? I don't remember. This is not that one. Is it this one? This is the Alex Bowman win. Yeah, so it's not this one. This is last year's races. So we need to go to the laps, which, yet again, why? This is usually what I cut out when I'm not. It's this one here. Usually when I pause the video, it's me doing that, so I'm not wasting your time. So we're looking at the pit stops, lap 258. That will end up being Bell's pit stop on lap 258. So let's go ahead and see what was going on here. And that was this pit stall, 258, 250. And you got to remember that his scoring, relative to where his pit stop is, this one here, this stall, it is before the start-finish line. And so you can see, based on how the pit data comes in, you can see that his lap, he goes leader's lap, his lap. So he's on 258, 258. He gets the 4-tire pit stop. He comes back out, and you can see based on his laps, he gets that completed because it's on 258. He then crosses the line. Actually, it might be right before. It might be right after. Let me see. Will be a good indication of where they're at. So we're gonna see. I'm sorry, I'm wasting your time with this stuff, and it does switch off. You see that Bell is here. I'm assuming the start finish line is right before because he actually crosses the line in first. So he enters the pits in third, crosses the start finish line in fourth, gets his tires, comes back out and crosses the line. I have to show it in my hands for whatever reason. Comes back down 258. He crosses the line, technically the leader, so gets a lap led, does his 4-tire change, exits pit road, then comes back around across the line in 5th, okay? Anyway, very long-winded. I'm answering too many things that don't need to be answered here. But looking at his pit stops times and looking at his times here, they're not bad at all. That is a false narrative that was created by the broadcast, saying that, Bell's going to have a tough time in pit lane. This crew's going to have a tough time on pit road because they got this gigantic stripper pole in the middle of their thing. That is false. So whenever they say that, or anybody says that, let's call them out and say, hey, that did not affect Christopher Bell in this previous race. Okay? I lost my train of thought. Oh, I was going to talk about the pit stall selection and everything. Now that we've seen that, we can understand that pit stall number 21 is not going to be a hindrance to a team. Okay, if it's a good team. Now, we've clearly shown that Christopher Bell's times were not hindered by that at all in this previous race. And so keep that in mind. This is just things that I wanted to go over as I'm here. So we've looked at the pit stalls from last race. We understand that based on pit stalls this year, it's playing a huge deal. Like pit road is playing a huge deal. And this race will be decided on two things. You get the lead, leaving a stage on pit lane, and you take the lead on when you pit during the strategy play in the race. And how do we determine who's going to have a chance to lead laps? Who do we determine who's going to have a fast lap? What's going to determine that stuff? Well, in fast laps, as I said, we're going to have those spread out, but we can look and determine our group of guys that can lead laps and be up there and specifically run a top 5. And very quickly we'll go over the laps real quick. And so this is based on where they end up finishing, and so sorted by the finishing order. But let's just pay attention to where let's do the top 7, because that's the majority of where these guys were. Clearly, Bowman gained a lot of positions in the race. Kyle Busch was, and really that pit stall didn't necessarily hurt Kyle Busch, because he just had to end up going into he had to pit again. Like they were originally going to do the same strategy that Hamlin was going to do, but he just had to pit again to get that off. But it was a 2-pit strategy that other people were doing, so it didn't necessarily kill Kyle Busch, but it did play a role. He most likely would have finished probably, I'm going to assume, probably end up around 5th or 6th. It only hindered him by about 4 positions. But let's go ahead and just diving back, looking at the field backwards where these guys went. And my phone's going off. Let me take this phone call real quick. Man, we are blowing through the pauses. This is going to be a really choppy video. But hey, man, that's how NASCAR YouTubers are. You ever watch Eric Estep? He has a chop every second. He can't compete. He can't compete. He can't complete a sentence. This is how he talks. This is how Eric Estep talk. The video just keeps jumping. Anyway, going on a tangent. We don't need that. Looking at it backwards, we can see where everybody pits. Actually, we'll look at stage 3. So clearly, we have the 2 yellows. That kind of, it doesn't gain people a gigantic amount of strategy by pitting here, but we see certain guys do decide to pit just to try and gain a little laps, gain a little fuel mileage advantage over the field. But we see a majority of the people pit first, right around lap, I would say, really considering it, probably around 3:05. They're probably thinking about it right here, seeing what people want to do. Harvick is the first one down here. We see guys in the back of the field actually start pitting around 2:95 and stuff. But we see the first pit sequence in stage 3 happen here, and then we see it happen again with a 2-stop strategy around here. Whereas if you were going in a 1 lap, you just went basically, actually this is the majority of the 1-stoppers. The 2-stop strategy were basically built here. And so not really what it comes down to is this area here was either your one and only pit stop in stage 3, or it was your second one. It could have been your first, as I said, if you're doing oh man, this is a terrible video. We're going downhill fast. You know what I mean. We had 2 strategies here. Basically an F1 race, okay? Guys pitting twice, some people pitting once. Depending on what they did in the yellows here, also dictated what they did here. Because if you're doing a 2-stop strategy, you could have very easily done 2 stops here. But if you're doing a 1-stopper, then you had to go 80 laps to the end. Whereas if you pitted at the stage or in any one of these, you could have gone to 40 laps and you pit around here, and then you pit again, right around 350 to 360, somewhere around there. Anyway, looking at the top 10 guys here. I'm so sorry that this is all over the place, but this is what happens when Pearce makes such good videos that I don't have to really tread over the same water. Anyway, that's the point I wanted to make. What dictated these people being up front? Basically, that's what I want to focus on compared to where these guys are here today, where these salaries are here. What are the guys we want to look at? People we want to look at. Clearly, the KBM cars, rightfully so, are some of the most expensive guys here. However, we also need to acknowledge the fact that we are Oh, that was the other thing. Hold on. I remember what I want to do. Sorry. I remember what I want to do right before the pit stall happened. So this is the race for last year in April. This is the ownership for that race, and so I'm going to show this to you if it'll load. Clearly, these are the notes. We have two sets of notes: the live version and a version that Pearce made rewatching the video. I'm just showing you where I'm getting this stuff from. You can get this. So if you're supporting us on Twitter, not on Twitter, if you're supporting us on Patreon, you get tons of sheets. We're a library, okay? We are a tool you can use to find a outrageous amount of data. You want to look at certain things here, you can control F. Here, I'll just control F. So let's just say, what happens to Kyle Busch? I'm going to control F tape, and so you can just control F, you can find tape, and we can find NASCAR is posted. So this is stage 3, 51 laps into stage 3. NASCAR is telling Kyle Busch he's got a pit. He can't have tape on the grill, despite the fact that they had added laps, 200 laps. So this is how you can use this stuff to find out things that you, for a reason, if NASCAR didn't add it in their own notes by themselves, so you don't have to rewatch the race. Tons of things out there. I'm going to actually move this back off so I can have the ownerships over here while I look at certain people. And I'm using this now as an indication of what we could possibly see this weekend based on where people start. It's not necessarily, Blaney, Byron. I'm going to do this right quick to just show an example of how I would look at it. And I will switch it back. But typically, black out the names, okay? We're using this as an example of if a driver has this type of data from practice, if a driver has this type of data from practice, and he's starting in this situation here, it's not necessarily relative to Blaney's going to have this ownership. So-and-so's going to have this exact ownership. It's not that. It's driver A, driver B, driver C, blah, 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 blah. Okay? That's how I look at this stuff. I'm just going to leave it up there so I can very easily see where I need to go. So like Blaney, fastest across the board. People understood that he would have a good car. End up coming in as the second highest owned driver in a situation, and we see this a lot when who's going to lead races? We don't exactly know who's going to lead races. There's a lot of people who can lead races and blah, blah, blah. Typically, ownership will then diverge off of let's try and pick where these people are and pick who's going to lead laps to, well, the place differential play in the back is going to easily outscore, a lot of people. He's going to be, you need the place differential play in your optimal line, blah, blah, blah. And so we end up having, I just click down on this. We end up having Alex Bowman, and this is ownership for the 15, I believe it is. We end up having Alex Bowman starting 28th, carrying the most ownership at 44.62, and then we have Blaney at 42. Ownership point. That's his ownership. Once we got past that, we got to remember that this was Larson mania. At the start of the year, and granted, I was there. I projected Larson in this race because it was early in the year for 64 points. I'm going to open up a second tab actually. Hold on. All right, this will be a lot easier, me clicking this tab versus scrolling through, scroll on the cup data. And so, anyway, Larson, what does Larson end up doing? He does 59 points. And so, this is when Larson, it was still early in the year. We were expecting Larson to kill the field like he did in a lot of the races last year. I think a lot of people thought that he would end up doing that, and so Larson ends up coming in as the third highest owned driver at 39 points. We can easily see why people came to those conclusions, and while ownership should correct itself in this race, like we won't have a certain driver that is projected to kill the field based on what he did last year, and to where they don't end up running away with the race or anything like that. So a Larson situation might not actually end up showing up this weekend, but it's still important to understand why people went a certain way last time, why people built certain lines last time. Okay, at that point, Truex was then the fourth highest driver with 36 points. So we can very easily see a big drop-off between, 40s, and we get some guys in the 30s, and a lot of people in the 20s. And same thing happened at Martinsville, where we had a couple people in the 40s, some in the low 30s, and then just a ton of people in the 20s. And you can very easily look at it as, 1 in every 4 lines have these guys, 1 in every 5 lines have these guys. That's more so what it happens. Whereas in previous years, or at least in races to where it's easier to project who's going to be a consistent lap leader, you end up having guys more consistently be in the 30s, 40s as lap leaders, kind of similar to like Xfinity, to where you have ownership condensed on 2 or 3 projected lap leaders, to where here at the short tracks, I think we're going to run the same situation where we're going to have a lot of guys in the 20s and low 30s this year or in this race. Austin Dillon is 32% owned. I'm assuming he's starting far in the back, and that was probably following his finishes in the previous years. Where did Dillon end up scoring? Dillon ends up, just control left. Hope I can find him. Dillon ends up missing. He ends up being optimal at 51 points because he was the place differential play there. We then get Kurt Busch at 30. That was a rough day for Kurt Busch owners. I know I did not have Kurt Busch. That is one thing I do remember from this, because I was not freaking out when Kurt Busch runs only like 6 laps. That's not optimal. That is where? Oh man. Kurt Busch, for those that don't remember, he ends up having I forgot if it was a fuel. I'm pretty sure it was a fuel pump issue. I have so many tabs open. This poor computer is dying. We see Kurt Busch run a grand total of... Oh, yeah, I forgot he ends up going back out. He just runs all day and fucking last. I forgot. Oh, what a brutal day for Kurt Busch. So Kurt ends up... First off, he starts 27, runs fine, ends up running into issues, and then stalls on the racetrack at lap 10, and then he's just done for the... He completed 10 laps and stayed out. Hopefully the people would wreck out, but he didn't. Kurt Busch ended up being 30% owned. Harvick was at 28, starting 7th. Kyle Busch was 26th, starting 3rd. Chastain was 24, starting 8th. Reddick was 23, following his performance at Phoenix the previous week. Bell was 21. Logano was 21. And those are the main guys that I wanted to look at. Hamlin was 18. Very interesting. So, Hamlin's speed, when we look at the practice times here for Hamlin, I'm assuming he's probably around 11th. Where are we at? Around 15th average. We can look at his lap times, and this should have indicated that he would have had a pretty decent car. Same thing with Chase Elliott. So this is what really brought his time down. So when we're looking at times and stuff, and yet again, when we look at practice this week, we're gonna have the 2 groups. We need to see people actually run laps. I want to see. I don't give a shit if they are good in the 5-lap average. Very similar to like Eric Jones. Eric Jones was, what did he come in at? Eric Jones came in at 11%. That was in my opinion, even with what we're seeing based on what he had here, that was a negative EV play. To those 11% people playing Eric Jones, I think that was a bad move based on his practice time, because he was extremely quick for these laps here, then fell off a cliff, stupid fast. Whereas you're looking at Hamlin in practice, and yes, we're seeing gigantic tire fall off. This is 23 laps in based on his practice time, but we're not seeing him fall off the cliff. We're not seeing these guys fall off the cliff. I know Chase Elliott had a really good car because, what did Chase Elliott do? He worked on a long run in this race here, okay? Huge long runs. That was great to see, and that was backed up by him really, I think, running through the field early in this race. Yeah, so Chase Elliott starts 15th, and out of everybody who's actually, kind of stagnant in where they're at, Chase Elliott keeps running through that field. Chase Elliott is there, and I'm pretty sure he just has a bad time. Ooh, what happens here? He got off sequence, so this is an example of what happened here. So at the end of stage 3, because we don't know when yellows are coming out, and we had an anomaly of 2 yellows right off the bat here in stage 3. Chase Elliott has a top 10 car, ends up pitting here, and is then forced to go. I believe he's on the 1-stop straight. No, he pits twice. Just sequencing caught him off guard. Him actually pitting during the second yellow is what killed Elliott. It was just bad timing. He was deep in the field. got stuck at 18th, and he just wasn't able to gain those positions because actually what Elliott should have done, and this is more, quarterback, armchair quarterback, he either stays with two-stop strategy or, but he's in ninth. He doesn't have the. I don't think there's much Elliott could have done here. I was gonna say he could have ran it long, but he was already probably losing positions, and he would have been in 7th. He probably would have finished in the same spot. I'm assuming that's why they didn't pit. They didn't do a one-stop, and they were forced to just stay in a two-stop because he wouldn't gain a lot of positions. But this is really what hurt Elliott here, is just pitting off sequence, trying to big brain the field, and I think this is probably a play, hoping that they get a yellow later in the race, because he stays out here during the first yellow and pits here. So that's really what killed it. Anyway, looking back at the practice times and why he was so slow here and what should have leaned towards him and why his ownership ended up being around 19, I don't know. Maybe I'm going in circles. Maybe this is helping. Maybe it's not. Anyway, I want to do that real quick before we get to this. And you can continue this if you're supporting us on Patreon, if you're doing all that. You can look at ownership. You can look at all the stuff for the previous race in March and stuff. And so, all right, let's get to the picks. I know I've kept you here long enough. I appreciate it, man. It's been a wild race. 41 minutes in. We're kind of almost done. Just stick with me here. When I look at the race, oh, that was okay. Yet again, going back and forth. I know we're running around a lot. And I've been stopped. I got the phone call. Whatever. Pay attention to the schedule. I understand people don't want to do that a lot, and people are like, well, we just, the schedule's great and all that. We have not been to a short track since Martinsville and since Richmond, and that was in April, okay? We took, and I'm saying the teams took some things they possibly could have learned from those racetracks and possibly applied them to Loudon, okay? And possibly applied them to Gateway. However, it is not an identical, take this data point that we learned from the setup at Richmond and Martinsville and apply it to Gateway or New Hampshire. It is not like that, but it's things that you can learn from the flatter tracks, which is Richmond. I know Richmond has banking, but it's still relatively slow. You got to carry speed to the corner, specifically 1 and 2, ladies and gentlemen. 2 is a very tight turn. That is where your speed comes from. Okay, 3 and 4, you can slide up the track in 3 and 4. You can, especially exiting 4, you can exit on the low, come to the wall, or you can exit by the wall. But mastering turns 1 and 2, and specifically having your car rotate well in turn 2 at Richmond, is what keeps your speed. Okay? That's the slowest part of the racetrack. The exit of turn 2 leads all the way, and I'm going to use straightaway loosely, but the exit of 2 leads to the straightaway from 2 back to 2, okay? Because, yes, you let off the gas in 3, you let the car roll in the center of 3 and 4, but really, the slowest part of the track is turn 2. That's where you want to master that stuff at. And you can take turn 2. You can take some of the things you might use at turn 2, some of the setup tricks that you might use to have your car rotate well in turns 1 and 2 at Richmond, and apply that to Gateway. And possibly apply that to, probably not New Hampshire, but you can see what I mean, why I'm using that. Anyway, when I'm looking at the schedule here, let's really pay attention to where we're at. So following the short track here, we went to dirt. We went to Dega. Intermediate. Maybe just, a smidget from the short tracks. Road course. Intermediate. Road course. Super. And a little smidget, but still not really. A little smidget, but not really. You're more so using what you're learning at Loudon and Nashville and other places when you're looking at Pocono, specifically the tunnel turn and turn 3. But we got a road course. We got a 2 mile. Now we're back here, okay? It's been a very long time since we've been on a short track. So when we look at these salaries, a lot of it is relative to what we have done in the last 2 months. What have we done in the last 2 months? We have not done any short tracking, okay? We are not short trackers. For the last couple months, we have not been. We have been road courses. We have been intermediates. We are going back quite a few months to look at the last short track we have been at. So when we're looking at the pricing, it is more so based on recent form and what DraftKings believes that they're going to do. Like, Chase Elliott's looking good. I do believe that Chase Elliott can be fast here, but who stands out to me as being, like a misprice? They're being a bit too expensive based on what they're doing. They're being a little underowned. Like Harvick, $9,100. I'm interested in Harvick. We saw that Harvick ran well at Richmond this last time, at the fifth fastest car. When we look at how he ran in Martinsville, that's what we want to see. We want to see somebody being there. We want to see somebody having a chance to be there and contend. And where are we at, Harvick? We want to see somebody be there at the end of this race, okay? And Harvick used strategy and got up there and finished second. But look, you get fast laps, you don't get fast laps. Actually, let me change that because this is a short track based on strategy. You don't have a chance to lead laps. You don't have a chance to win if you don't put yourself in a position to do that. That is what Harvick did a lot in this race, okay? Pearce talked about it as well in his videos, but we are at a situation, we are at a point to where Harvick has momentum, okay? Harvick has the win. The team is actually firing on all cylinders. I understand they don't have the straight up head-to-head speed to go in a 5-round fight with Joe Gibbs. But man, if it's a 3-rounder or, fighter's chance, fighter's luck. I forgot the terminology, but stuff goes right for Harvick. He can go in, knock him down. He can use strategy here and actually show up and be pretty good. And this is one of his early races this year. And this is back when they did not have speed week in and week out. Harvick had an extremely good car and a good strategy in this race. Keep that in mind. I think Harvick at $9,100 is very interesting. When we look at William Byron, I understand we see a stretches of some pretty poor finishes outside of the top 12, but when we look at these two races specifically, the short tracks here, it's Byron. Him at $8,600 I think is a discount. I understand that people are going to look back at this, and I think Byron's probably going to be popular. I think he's probably going to be a bit chalky, at least early in the week. Granted, it can change based on practice speed, based on practice data, based on where he qualifies. A lot of things can happen, but right now, Thursday, I can see Byron being very popular, and for good reason. I think they can very easily fall back on what worked at Richmond and what worked at Martinsville and what helped him in these races here and come back and actually be pretty good. Bowman, coming off a pretty poor stretch, man. I understand, and at least he got a top 10 for once. It's been a long time. But him at 84, I think this is a discount. I understand that I was a bit concerned. And, fuck, man, the race got so twisted last weekend. Oh, I was so pissed, man. Unbelievable. I knew. As soon as Yaley got that live reaction, I was like, fuck, Busch is in this. He's going to be in. He's going to drive right into it. He has nowhere to go. Anyway, long story short, when we look at Kyle Busch, 11-4, look, don't let the previous races scare you here. Wait a minute. What the heck? Wait a minute. Oh yeah, that's why. It's because they got DQ'd. I was like, why am I seeing them at second? Because all these reporters keep bitching and moaning that Kyle Busch is garbage. That Kyle Busch hasn't got a top 10 in forever. Okay, all right, NASCAR reporters, let me hear you. Back it up, drivers. Back it up, NASCAR reporters. Kyle Busch hasn't had a top 10 in the longest stretch of his career. Kyle Busch he's having a bad time, man. He's slow. He's having a bad stretch. He's had like 15 weeks to where he hasn't finished a race. Okay, then why is DraftKings pricing him at $11,400? What is DraftKings having to win this race? Bet you he's going to be a top 4 contender. Let me just see real quick. What are his odds over here? He's the third highest. He's minus 110 for a top 5, man. Like, look, Joe Gibbs is here. I would really appreciate if people would stop just bashing Kyle Busch for no reason whatsoever. Anyway, going through. Sorry, we're deep in a tangent. This video is probably going to perform terrible. I'm so sorry. Also, Kimi Raikkonen is testing the 91 car for Trackhouse, the Project 91. I know rookies get their test races. However, they don't get to do that in Cup. Very peculiar that Kimi is testing a car at Virginia's road course when NASCAR is very, very strict on testing in the Cup Series. Is that unfair to anyone else? Like, that's kind of bullshit. It's not for Kimi. Like, Kimi, I don't give a shit if he's a player or not next week at Watkins Glen. Trackhouse is getting more track time for the road course cars, which they are already killing at, already murdering the field. And now they're getting more track time. I understand. Brandon, they're not racing at Richmond. They're not racing at Virginia's road course. I understand that. But still, track time is track time for these setup builders, for the track teams, you know? I think that's a bit unfair, man. I think that gives Trackhouse a really, really unfair edge next week at Watkins Glen. I think that's a bit shitty for NASCAR to do. That's just a bit weird. I haven't seen anybody talk about it. I haven't seen anybody talk about it from that point of view. But yeah, that's kind of odd that Kimi is testing the car this week for Trackhouse. Yeah, like we're going so far off the beaten path, but bro, this is some bullshit. This is some bullshit that Trackhouse is getting to take a next gen car and get extra time on it. That's bullshit, NASCAR. Who cares about Kimi? Trackhouse team getting more data than the rest of the field. That's bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Because I think Chastain and Suarez can. I think the team can use a lot of this data that Kimi is getting for him, and it helps Kimi out. I mean that's, as I said, a bunch of bullshit. Back to Richmond really quick. Oh man, if you're still watching here, let me know. What do you think of Kimi getting that track time? What do you think of Trackhouse getting that extra time? Anyway, Suarez looking good. Bubba Wallace, $8,000. I understand that this is recent stuff, but the improvements that this team has made, the improvements that Toyota has made, I believe that they're going to be strong this weekend. And I understand that these are not finishes that are screaming off the board for you, but Bubba only needs 40 points to pay it off. I think he can very easily do that. Eric Jones, I think their team shows up and be like, hey, you know what we should do? Let's run some long runs. Let's work on some long run speed, okay? Let's not focus on being top of the charts. Let's focus on actually having a car that's going to last in the race. Okay, Briscoe, 777. Clearly going to have top 15 speed based on this alone, based on his finishing in this race alone, based on where they ran, right around 15th. Actually, that'd be an average of, what is that, like 14.5 or something here? 14, I don't know. I didn't go to college. Interesting play at $7,700. Ty Gibbs, I think he does struggle here. I think this is a situation where I'm not very concerned about. I'm not really going to focus on Ty Gibbs' line because I think it's going to be a very, very tough racetrack for Ty Gibbs. Just due to how this race is going to go, I don't think they're going to have the speed to cut through the field, and so let's keep that in mind. When we're looking through the rest of these guys here, Mcdowell had a terrible time because they had to make an unscheduled pit stop and he got put. He just got trapped lap down. Granted, he did get a ton of fast laps, but I think McDowell can. We're gonna have to see. I don't see anybody else popping off real quick right here. Probably won't go to. Burton's a bit expensive at 5.8. That's gonna be tough to get to. Depending on what Cole Custer can do, that might be tough to get to. I could have sworn that Hemrick had more. Maybe that is why Gregson's seeing more races, because I could have sworn Gregson, or I didn't know Gregson was going to do this race earlier in the year because he didn't run earlier in the year. It was Hemrick, so that's kind of crappy, but oh well. Ty Dillon 54 might be considered. LaJoy 52 could possibly be considered, but he's really, I understand, 18th at the road course, 19th last week at Michigan, but man, he is making Alan Kwiecki roll in his grave. comparing himself to him, because I don't think he's going to have the speed here. Dillon, I understand Dillon struggled. I understand that he was not the fastest car this last time around. But $5,100, that's a situation we might get to. Same thing with Castle. Castle might be interesting as well. We need to see what they can bring. It's interesting that we're seeing more, and I put in Discord, and I usually trust, what's her name? The Science of Speed lady. I can't remember her name right now. She's a doctor, or she has doctor in her name, whatever the case is. She normally does some good work, but DNFs are up across the board this year, and I understand that a lot of that is being carried by Atlanta having more DNFs than usual, but we are seeing more guys get wrecked out in these races. That always helps the value range kind of come through, especially at the bottom end. So if we're looking at 5K Castle, 49 Ware, even BJ or Yaley, I think we can possibly have these guys considered in the player pool depending on where they qualify and depending on what happens up front. And it's not necessarily those guys wrecking out, because I don't think we're going to have a lot of DNFs here, but it's trying to just gobble up all the fast laps and laps that you can. We can certainly consider them. And in the past, we have seen short tracks be a place that you do want to go with your punts down at the bottom of the barrel. Yaley, Ware, Castle, even BJ can all be considered in my opinion. Excuse me. Thank you guys for watching. If you're still here, maybe this helped you out. Maybe this was the worst video you've ever seen in your life. I understand. But check Pearce's stuff out. If you haven't seen it and you're still here, watch Pearce's stuff. Thank you for watching my stuff, and I will see you guys in live shows.